Urban Meyer went out there and actually said that Michigan was going to struggle against Nebraska. You'd think you'd feel a little foolish. Michigan didn't struggle against Nebraska. Michigan did very well against Nebraska. 45-7. Game wasn't even that close. Heck of a game by the Wolverines. Complete domination from beginning to end, looking more like what we expected to. We're going to talk about it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Sunday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. No, I am not doing a car show like I said I was going to because my mount broke. Or it didn't break, it just didn't work. But after making the long trek back from Nebraska, don't say I don't care about you guys. I'm here doing the Sunday show as promised, just wasn't in the car. But maybe we'll figure that out later. Or maybe it'll just be whenever I get home or, maybe before I leave, depending on how long the trip is. Anyway, enough about the logistics. Michigan beat Nebraska 45-7. Let's talk about it. It was a complete and utter domination from start to finish. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous in every way. The fact that Nebraska had 7 points is kind of an anomaly going up against Michigan. There were a couple starters out there. I mean, Rod Moore didn't start. He was a reserve in this game. But it was like Rod Moore and Will Johnson were out there still. But otherwise, it was like second, third, and fourth stringers that were out there, literally, on the touchdown. So game wasn't even that close. I mean, from the jump, right? From the opening kick, Michigan absolutely thoroughly dominated that game. Just absolutely destroyed them in every which way. Opening drive, just moved the ball down the field like nothing, with one of the most spectacular catches we've seen so far this year in college football by Roman Wilson. I didn't really see it because I was snapping away. I'm sure if you look on YouTube, that's certainly the picture I'm using for this. But when little inside thing here, if I sit there and hold the shutter down, so it's like, the, type of thing, I don't actually get to see anything. So it makes it like a little difficult when you're trying to like gauge what's going on, right? Like I try to selectively like, and then, you're getting something. So I had no idea what I was even capturing at that moment, but heck of a play by Roman Wilson. Interception by Kenneth Grant. Michigan has apparently made it a thing. Busy hands, right? They knew that Heinrich Harburg had a low release, and you just saw play after play where someone got a hand in there. Braden McGregor got it in on that first one. Kenneth Grant's the recipient. Clearly, I had a bad view of it because I thought he just kind of stood there once he got it, and turns out he did try to move it forward. He was just surrounded by people, so I made a fool of myself in front of Kenneth Grant. Austin Fox does not listen to this podcast, but if he did, man, he would just be so happy to hear that I said I made a fool of myself. Because when he was at, never mind, inside joke there. But heck of an amazing performance. I mean, went from there right to the next touchdown. Kalel Mullings just rumbles through on a 4th and 1. Gets 20-something yards. I think he surprised even himself with that. I don't think he even knew he was going to score out as he got it. And it was on, right? Nebraska drove the field. Seemed like they were going to be able to cut it a little bit. Michigan stops them down in Michigan's end, down near the red zone, in the red zone. I don't remember exactly. And then turnover on downs. Michigan moves the ball right back, scores another one, right? That's just what they did. It was exactly the type of stuff that we thought we were going to see in weeks 1 through 3. How much does that mean Jim Harbaugh, his return, affects the team that much? I think quite a bit. And I think the fun part is when I did the preview show, pretty much everything happened that I said was going to happen. Right down to the, hey, Nebraska theoretically, and again, we talked about, if you watch or listen to this show, you knew that Nebraska, they were playing teams that were not running teams anyway. But with all the talk, heck of a run defense. Certainly they were able to run, had a rushing offense. Michigan just shut both down. And Michigan said, we're going to run the ball against what's considered to be the best run defense in the country. Again, you knew that was a little bit of a paper tiger if you've been watching or listening to this show. But they did exactly that, right? And I asked Jim Harbaugh, I said, what does it mean when you get to take away the thing that a team is known for? They did it to Penn State last year. So that's what they did. They go out there and they take the will out of a team. And that's what they did in this one. I thought some of the late game stuff by Matt Rule was kind of ridiculous, right? Again, quick aside, big thanks to Steve and Amy to letting me stay at their house. And we went to church this morning. That was wonderful. And I had an amazing time. But Steve brought up last night, he's like, how I was so mad about Matt Rule. Like him having to pull starters back out there for the onside kick. And yeah, that was a Bush League move. I thought it was also a Bush League move to continue to have the first team offense out there trying to move the ball when Michigan's trying to end the game. Now, Michigan shouldn't have passed the ball on fourth and whatever. They should have tried to run it, and then they could have kneeled it and the game would have been over. But instead, you had all these extra plays and you have the danger of injury and all of that kind of stuff. Now, those aren't the starters. You don't want the starters out there for the hands team. That's where it did get absolutely asinine and absolutely ridiculous. But it was interesting also hearing what Matt Rule kind of said after the game, because they really thought that it was going to kind of go maybe not quite as how Urban Meyer planned. But remember, I said this was the game that was circled on the calendar for Matt Rule. It definitely was. The problem was nothing that he had going worked. None of it. Michigan's like, Dikembe Mutombo, right? That's what they were like about it. I mean, just firing in all phases, even to the point where Tyler Morris, I didn't really see that play. I was on the literal other end of the field, and I kind of watched the replay. But I mean, the ball bounces and he catches it in stride and runs for an extra however many yards. That's the type of day it was for Michigan. Just pure domination. Everything pretty much worked. Nothing pretty much didn't. And it's the interesting thing of when you go to Memorial Stadium, and even in the daytime, right? Because I was there at night last time. You're there in the daytime. You see 90,000 plus people there. They're raucous. It's a huge stadium, right? It looks kind of similar in a lot of ways to Ohio Stadium or Kinnick. It's like a mix between Ohio Stadium and Kinnick, but it feels bigger even than Ohio Stadium. It just feels beyond massive. Ohio Stadium feels massive. This feels even bigger. And it's not, but it feels like it is. And so like you start feeling like, ooh, this might be a daunting task just because the home field advantage. And then Michigan just completely wipes the floor with them. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. All right, let's continue talking about the game. I've got more thoughts, and I do want to get into the Urban Meyer stuff because I mean, he deserves some ridiculousness for his comments. We're going to do that in just a moment. Before we do, you don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. Men think losing their hair is inevitable. Take control of your hair's future with Nutrafol's science-backed hair growth supplement for men. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. So go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz. Identify causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. And it works. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol's men's hair growth supplement. So take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelt Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. I'll tell you what, the drive back is always harder than the drive to. That's not the longest I've driven to get to a game, but it's the longest I've done for a single game. I drove to Atlanta for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in 2018. I didn't feel like flying. You all know I've had issues with that until, my Christian testimony is that I've always, the name Isaiah, I was born in the early 80s. I mean, I was obviously raised a Christian. I always believed in God, but it was God spoke to me on a flight, said, I did not give you the spirit of fear, and that's helped. So that was just earlier this year. But 2018, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna drive. I just wanted a road trip. I do that every now and again. I did the same thing going into Minnesota in 2020. I was like, I just want a road trip. I didn't even look at flights for Minnesota. I was just like, I'm just gonna drive it. I probably could have flown cheaper than I drove. And it's only like an hour and a half flight, so it's not even that big of a deal. But I was just like, I'm just not gonna do it. Yeah, single game going there, such a breeze. And even though I had an extra 2 hours onto the whole thing because I forgot my parking pass and had to go, which is why you got the show in front of the Memorial Stadium on Friday night. But totally forgot my parking pass and had to drive the hour past my hotel to get there and drive back and all of that. But driving back was painful. It was a lot less joyous driving back than it is driving there. It always is. Anyhow, let's take a look at some of the stats just to kind of get into it. Before we even do that, and I'm not going into an ad, I think it's important to note that, and I tweeted this out this morning, Roman Wilson leads all wide receivers, and he's tied for first, but still leads all wide receivers with 8 touchdowns receiving. Blake Corum leads all running backs, also tied with someone else, with 9 touchdowns. That is impressive. That is super, super, super impressive that Michigan's got both the leading receiver with touchdowns and the leading running back. So Roman Wilson is tied with Brian Thomas from LSU with 8. Brian Thomas has 33 receptions to Roman Wilson's 19. So that tells you a little bit. Roman averages 3.8 catches a game to Brian Thomas' 6.6. Really kind of when you look at this list, I mean, Brendan Rice, you might remember, was a Michigan target, went to Colorado, blasted Michigan State, all kinds of stuff. It was all kinds of fun. But he's at USC now. It's Jerry Rice's son. He's got 17 targets with 7 touchdowns, as is Jerwan Newton at Toledo. So generally pretty good company, but it makes it even more fun when you start looking at, like, you start trying to look for, what's his face, number 18 down there at that school that you all know. Having a hard time. I know I got to be skipping over him here. Here, let's just do it this way. Oh, there, he's 61st with 3 touchdowns. 17 receptions, 336 yards compared to 19 for 326. So 2 more receptions for Roman, few less yards, but a heck of a lot more touchdowns, which is the thing that matters more than anything else, right? So that's that. And when you go to the rushing, Blake Corum, he is tied with 2 other people. He is tied with Rasheen Ali from Marshall and Marcus Carroll at Georgia State. He's got less attempts than both. He's averaging more yards. Now, Ray Davis at Kentucky has got 1 less, and he's got a higher per average. It's got only 2 more carries and more yards. But nonetheless, pretty impressive that they're able to do that. Let's look at Nicholas Singleton has got 6. He's 15th in the country. And what's his face here? Travion Henderson, who has a higher per average, 4 games, but he's got 5 and he's 25th in the country. So that is pretty amazing. I'm I'm not going to look at the offensive stats overall. I don't think that matters. Well, no. Let's look at the scoring offense, just because I think that's... So for all the talk of Ohio State and everything, right? Ohio State's back on track, you guys. I understand they played a tougher defense in Notre Dame, but they also had a 60-point game against Western Kentucky. They are 38th after their 4 games in the country, averaging 34.5 points per game. Michigan is 39th and called the dogs off in the third quarter, midway through the third quarter for the first 3 games. Ohio State did not do that, so that's also a little bit of added fun. Michigan does have the top scoring defense in the country, just a tick above Ohio State, 1 versus number 2. Penn State's number 3. Michigan's allowing 6 points a game, has given up the starting defense has given up a grand total of 1 touchdown and 2 field goals, I think, total. The 2 to Bowling Green and the 1 touchdown to Rutgers. That's the starting defense. But ultimately, they've given up 30 points total in 5 games. So that's really impressive. As far as total defense, where is Michigan ranked? Number 4 in the country. Again, it's considering out of all of these games, they have not had the starting defense in the game really in the fourth quarter of any of the 5 games. Michigan's like that. The Michigan gave up with the backup defense a good 150 yards or so to Nebraska, but they're averaging 245 yards allowed. So that is impressive. Now, Penn State is number 1, allowing 210 so far. Has Penn State played anyone really impressive? I'm not sure, but that's what that is. I just think that's really interesting. Just interesting stuff there. I do want to also look really quickly at some of the stats just to kind of go through them. So Blake Corum managed 74 yards on 16 carries. Donovan Edwards had 48 on 14. I know in the second half or so, he didn't look as good. I thought he at least had a better first half, so that's good. He had a long of 9. Blake Corum had a long of 15. Still waiting to get in the end zone. Donovan Edwards, as you at least saw the backups doing a little bit better too. Jack Tuttle went 3 for 4. They scored a couple times with the backups, which is something they hadn't done yet all season. Roman Wilson led the receivers with 4 receptions for 58 yards. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns. Cornelius Johnson caught 2 of his 3 targets for 32 yards. Darius Clemens got 2 for 29, and A.J. Barner got 2 for 26. Colston Loveland, who had a couple go through his hands, targeted 3 times, caught 1 for 13. So anyway, that's really that. The defense certainly did a really good job in this one. Not a ton of sacks, of course. They got 4. It didn't seem like it had that much. But 4 sacks, that was all of the tackles for loss. You got 2 from Josiah Stewart, and then you got 1 each from Derek Moore and Braden McGregor. So impressive to see that they're starting to really kind of flex that against what was thought to be a good offensive line. But again, if you watch the show, listen to the show, you would know that, what's his name? Taylor Corcoran. I mean, he went out on a play where he got absolutely manhandled, just bull rushed into oblivion. So it's really impressive what they're able to do. All right, let's talk about Urban Meyer. His comments here in just a moment, because I think we got to touch on it. It's pure fun. Before we do that, snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. There's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, then there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, overs, unders, and more. Best thing is you can get paid instantly. That's my favorite thing about it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so Urban Meyer decided on Big Noon kickoff to go out there and kind of do the same thing he did twice last year that bit him in the you-know-what. Right, now let's play a little trip down memory lane here. Urban Meyer, before Penn State, said Michigan will not run the ball. Penn State will stop the run. Michigan ran for 418 yards. Maybe a little bit off on that prediction. Then you get to the Ohio State game. It said the Wolverines will not be able to run the ball against Ohio State. Well, I don't remember the amount of yards, but Donovan Edwards is still running. That's probably why you haven't seen him. He's still running when we're not seeing him. Like a bad joke anyway. He decided with the Nebraska, he said, I believe in Matt Rule. That's fine. That's fair. But he's like, this one's going to be a close game. He put Michigan on upset alert. All right, you deserve to eat some crow when you put a team on upset alert and say this one's going to be a close one. And then the team loses by 38 points, and it wasn't even that close. Like at that point, like you need your analyst card revoked, right? I mean, that's just embarrassing. Like it's funny because Urban has certainly had his moments where he's given Michigan a lot of respect. Sometimes he's gone over and above, right? He called Joe Milton, Cam Newton, things like that of that nature. So it's not like he's only speaking ill of Michigan, but it seems like when it comes to trying to make these types of predictions on the day of games, he's got his Ohio State glasses on and can't see Michigan for what it is. I understand Michigan hasn't necessarily been as thoroughly dominant as they were, but if Michigan wanted to put up 45 points in any of the first 3 games, it certainly could have. They called the dogs off. Maybe not against Bowling Green because J.J. McCarthy was an interception machine in that one. But at least in the other 2, they could have put up 45 points. It's just not their style, right? I was trying to explain to my mom on the ride home. She was asking, how did Michigan do? How's Ohio State doing this year? And I was trying to explain to her, listen, Michigan's really trying to score 35 points. That's what Michigan's trying to do. Anything above that is gravy. And there certainly are games like Rutgers 2016 where maybe they're going to try to score a little bit more out of some kind of spite. But generally, Michigan's trying to score 35 points, right? They're trying to get a decent lead, a 28-ish point lead, and then, 4-score lead, and then they're going to be like, all right, let's pull the starters, and then whatever happens from here is what it is. That's generally how Jim Harbaugh has operated. Generally not leaving the starters in when you're up 4 scores. I mean, I think he did this week, but I think it was just so early in the game at that point. But that is how they operate. Ohio State is trying to score 55 to 60 points every game. And that's why you saw last year, if you watch like Ohio State, Iowa, they're up big. And they've still got CJ Stroud out there tossing late in the 4th quarter. Why? Perfect time to get Kyle McCord acclimated at that point. Because Ohio State is trying to prove, look at how good we are. Michigan's not trying to do that. They're just trying to win the game. Typical Michigan. And it's like Urban Meyer was fooled because he was part of that Ohio State, right? We're just going to run up the score every game. That's just what we're going to do. He got fooled by those first games. Steve told me a statistic yesterday, and I can't remember what it was. But just like going back and you look at, like, Michigan has beaten every team by an average of what? I mean, let's just go back to the CFB stats. I mean, just this is just the average, right? So Michigan scoring offense, 34.4. Michigan scoring defense, 6. They're beating teams by an average of 28 points. It doesn't matter that they're playing absolute cupcakes, right? Georgia's defense is allowing 13 on average, and Georgia's offense is scoring an average of, I'm on total offense, not the right one. Georgia's offense is scoring an average of, wait for it, 39. So 24. So, I mean, that's obviously really good, but like what Michigan's doing is beyond impressive in just how they're going about their business. Just they've clowned every team. Now, not even Georgia's clowned every team. There is a case to be made for Michigan to be the number 1 team in the country. I know Texas is the Nouveau one. They've gained ground on Michigan, actually, in the coaches poll at least. Or maybe it was the AP. I'm not sure which one. But there is a case to be made that Michigan's the number 1 team in the country. Now, they haven't played it. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that, that's necessarily meaningful in the sense of it's not like they played Penn State and that's where they're at. That said, last year they did a pretty good job against Penn State and Ohio State. But they've gone out and done what they're supposed to do in the games that are in front of them. We'll see if it ends up mattering that much more later in October when they go to Michigan State, and then certainly in those last 3 games of the season. And if we're going to put anyone on upset alert, I'm going to put Ohio State on upset alert with Maryland. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back hopefully Monday if I can get my schedule sorted and everything. But that will do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. Peace.